Cool. Mech here with Sam. We are going to go through the Open Library website and make a change so that instead of this My Books button up here on the top navigation, bringing you to account loans, we are instead going to go to a new page, which is /account/books. This is a page that doesn't exist yet. Right now, when we do go to /account/books, this is already a route that Open Library knows of. And when it sees account/books, it decides what to add after here. I think by default, it goes want to read. So why don't we do an experiment where on openlibrary.org, the production website, we go to /account and /books. And we can see that it redirected us away from account books. And first, it redirected us to our fully qualified page, which includes /people/ our username /books. And then at the end, it added the want to read shelf. And what we would like to do is, in fact, make it so that if we go to /people/ our username and /books, or if we do /account/books, either way, that it should bring us to a new page. And the reason we want a new page is today, when people click My Books, it's unclear where they want to go. We know based on analytics that the majority of patrons want to see their loans. That's what they're doing. But some people want to see they're currently reading, want to read, already read, or some of their lists. And so throughout the course of many weeks, Sam and Dana and I have been exploring how to make the My Books button more useful, to show them some sort of summary rather than just bringing them to one of the existing pages. And then as a second step, which we're only going to partially cover today, trying to make this experience better for mobile. And the strategy that we are going to go for in mobile, actually, Sam, do you want to talk a little bit about kind of from a technical perspective, what we're going to do with the sidebar and the main content here on desktop versus mobile?
Yeah, sure. So basically, the idea is that on mobile, there's a lot of conflicting content and navigation on this page to all have in one vertical layout. So what we want to do is just take the navigation, which based on the way users use My Books, we've determined is the kind of the crucial functional piece of the page. We're going to take the navigation and using responsive design, make the mobile page essentially a redesigned version of the navigation that also includes summary material. So you would still see all the items, loans, currently reading, want to read, reading stats, etc. But that would just be the whole page, and it would appear as a kind of vertical menu with previews of the contents of those different sections.
Awesome. Yes. So on desktop, you would still see this sidebar, and the right side of the screen would show us a summary of, you would see a section for your loans. So you don't have to, click in. It would just say, here are your 5 loans. And then you would have a summary of currently reading. Then you would have a summary of want to read or already read. And if you wanted to change the page and see all of the books, you could on desktop. But the main difference is, rather than clicking on My Books, which I've just done, and assuming that they want to go to their loans page, instead, we're going to create a new page called My Books, which is a summary of all of these sections. And for mobile, the right side of the screen basically will be hidden, and the mobile experience will look very similar to the sidebar, except we'll stuff in additional information. For instance, on mobile, here it'll show you your loans, and here it'll show you a summary of you're currently reading. So it's almost like this My Books page will be integrated into and weaved into a version of this sidebar, which is all you see on mobile. All right. Thanks for explaining that, Sam. That's super helpful. So the first thing here is that /account/books is currently a redirect. And if we open up our GitHub, we could just do this in the code, but we currently have the solution kind of staged already in our local branch. So I will just navigate using GitHub for now. And the main project is within the Open Library repository. And one of the questions that you had asked before this call, Sam, is if someone goes to a page like openlibrary.org/account/books, or even the home page, then what is capturing this request and turning it into a request for a template? And there's a great video actually on our GitHub. It's not this one, I don't think, but it's in the same item. So I'm going to mess around with the URL here, details. So archive.org/details/openlibrary tour 2020. Kind of wish I didn't have the date in there because this is just useful outside of 2020. But there is a developer guide right here. And this guide goes through the whole process of talking about the different sections of Open Library and how to add pages. So I would refer folks who want the full kind of the full guide here to check out the book page developer. Oh, this is just for the books page. Sorry, there's a different URL here. It should be Open Library technical overview. That's the one we want. The technical overview is a 52-minute deep dive into how everything on the site works. And so I would say this is the place we should definitely start with. And so this will be our homework. But one of the things that the video will talk about is that within the Open Library project, there's a few directories which are especially important. One of them is called templates and macros. And templates and macros play very similar roles. This is where the HTML lives that gets rendered to the screen. The difference between templates and macros are that macros are typically these small reusable components that can be loaded within the template anywhere. So an example of a macro would be the book page navigation bar. So that's on openlibrary.org. We could choose a, let's see, we'll choose a book somewhere. Atomic Habits, maybe. And we'll get routed to the books page template, but the books page template will have right here an addition navigation bar, which is a macro. So macros are like components. And then templates map very closely to our URL structure. So here we have the home page right here. So we can go to home index, and then this is the home page to the website. All right, and then there's another directory. So those are the views. There's another directory called plugins. We need to go back outside of templates. So plugins here is what has the logic for our routes. So in the model view controller kind of mindset, there are really three directories that matter. There's the templates, which define the actual template markup that gets displayed to the page. There's plugins, which have URL patterns, regexes, that match what the patron is putting in their URL bar, and then does a bunch of logic, and then ultimately renders a template. And then there's the models, which is what the plugins call to get data. And that happens in openlibrary core. So core has things like get my book notes, get my bookshelves, perform lending actions, get my book ratings, books that I've sponsored, things of that nature. So those three components of the system all play together and are, I would say, combined by plugins. So I will give one example. Or let me explain how plugins works quickly, and then I'll give my example. So plugins has a few different pieces here. The ones that matter are openlibrary, and openlibrary, this could be refactored, I think, but openlibrary has things like the homepage. It has, that's really one of the main ones. It has the homepage, and then it also has controls for all of the JavaScript in the website, notably. So if we go to JS, we'll see all of the JavaScript that gets bundled in. And the website is smart enough to know which JavaScript needs to get run, depending on which page of the website you're in. And that happens all in ol.js, I believe. So we scroll down and we have somewhere, we should have, oh, this might not be the right file. We might have another top level file. Index.js. So index.js will have some of our polyfills, and then it decides based on where we are, what modules will get initiated and or kind of set up. So that's JavaScript. And then within the plugins directory in openlibrary, we can take a look at how home works. So here, ignore this. We want to go down a little bit. This should really be moved out of here. So here we have a function called get homepage, which is doing some stuff. But what we really want to look for is this pattern. Okay, cool. So the way that routing works in openlibrary is that there will be a class. That class extends something from infogami called delegate.page, which we don't have to worry about too much. And underneath the class definition, it specifies a path, which can be any regex pattern. So here we can actually see that we have another class for going to a random book page. And this function defines a get method. It could also define a post method if someone was going to submit post data to the endpoint. And here we call a function from one of our models, core lending, to get a random addition that is borrowable. And then we redirect to that borrowable book. And so if I go to openlibrary.org/random, that is the URL pattern that will get matched, and it will perform the associated logic. Here, similarly, if we go to the /endpoint, it will attempt to get the cached homepage for performance reasons, and then it will return the template, web.template, to the patron. So basically what we've discussed so far is that we have our models that are in core, openlibrary core, and then we have our views, which are in openlibrary templates and macros, and then we have our controllers, which are in openlibrary plugins. And we saw a few controllers that are in openlibrary, such as the homepage. There are the work search controllers are for search. This is all of the search engine stuff happens within work search. And then import API is all of our import endpoints. But the other one outside of openlibrary that's really important is upstream. Upstream relates to anything dealing with accounts or uploads. So here you can see we have the user interface to make a change on the website to merge authors that has its own logic. The thing that we're gonna look into is mybooks.py. And mybooks is the thing responsible for this whole page, account books, and the currently reading, want to read, already read. So within my books, we can take a look at some of the patterns here. And actually the first one that we hit is the one that we care about. This is defining a class called mybooks_redirect. And the way that it works is if one goes to /people/Samuel/books, then it will redirect by default to the want to read page. And instead, what we want to do is have this route not perform a redirect, but return a template. And so the first thing that we would have to do is go into templates and create a new template. And I'm going to show how that's done here in the code. So within the, let's see where we are, we can go into openlibrary templates. And then within our templates, we have a section for account, which is where these things live. And then within the account, we have, here's the sidebar that we're going to be using for some of our mobile redesigns. We have the reading log HTML, which is what shows up when we click currently reading. This part over here, when it loads, will be the reading log. The kind of this UI is shared between all three of these sections. And then we should have one for loans right here. So that's how, if we wanted to build a My Books page, the first thing we would do is we would create a new page called mybooks.html, which we've already done. And then we would probably look at the other files, such as loans, to see how we're fetching loans, because some of this content we might want to pull into our new books page. And so that's the first step, is to create a template. And on the left, we've done that. We created a new file called mybooks.html. But right now, there's no way to access this template. And so the thing that we would have to do is we would have to go into the plugins upstream mybooks.py file, and we would have to update what is currently a redirect to, instead of performing a redirect, it would need to return some sort of template. And so we have a second page here. The left is our template/account/mybooks, which is a new file we created. And on the right, what we're going to do is go to our plugins. I think it was plugins, and then upstream, and then my books. And here's a version that we've modified already. Instead of calling it My Books Redirect, we've just named it My Books Home. And then I've noted here, there is also a redirect from, so if we look at the URL here, this only handles the case where we go /people/sam/books. But there's another case as well, right? Which is the other way to get to this page is /account/books, which is defined in another file. But we don't need to update that redirect because it already just redirects here. Does that kind of make sense?
Oh, sorry, I was muted. Definitely makes sense.
Cool. So now if we go to openlibrary.org, I'm going to actually go to my test server and we go to /account/books. The first step here is that this endpoint /account/books will redirect to /people/sam/books. And then what used to happen is this endpoint would then add want to read to the end, right? And so what we've done is we've kept this the same. Account/books will redirect to people Sam books, but we're just going to remove the want to read because this used to be another redirect, right? This would go to from people Sam books to people. Sorry. Then Sam, then books, then want to read. So we have redirects upon redirects upon redirects. Now the thing that's happening is we just go from account/books to people Sam books and we return the page. So we don't actually have to go into this other function and change it because it's just going to redirect here. And now what we do in our logic is we get the current user, the current user that's logged in, and we can do that because when we go to /account/books, that has access to our username. I can actually show that. It's easy enough to show. So that is in plugins, upstream, account. And where did we say? It's in plugins, account my books. So account my books. So here it gets the user from a function called accounts.getCurrentUser. And as long as this can be called from anywhere, as long as a user is logged in, then, and assuming we are in a class that is a controller, then we can get the user. Here, we don't actually need to get the user in the same way because it's been passed into the URL. So this right here, /account/books, will get the user and then we'll redirect you to your my books page, which is up here. And so now in the URL, this regex pattern within the parentheses is text that will get captured by this variable username. So this will be /people/sam/books, and Sam, the thing that is in the parentheses, will actually get injected into this variable username. So now when we're in the function, we have Sam available to us. And then what we're doing here is we get the user based on the username. We check, first of all, whether they are the owner of the page and whether they have permission. And this might need a little bit of additional logic. So we have to check even if the reading log is not public, we still want it to work for the user, right? So we should say is public is either, let's just make a note. We want this to be is public or user current user equals user. So that's a small change that we can make. This I think may not be needed. I'm gonna remove this just for a second. This just kind of updates and refreshes all of their loans. And then here, this is where all of the logic is being done under the hood to fetch their data. So we don't need this bottom half anymore. So we should look into what reading log is doing. But just assume for now that mybooks is fetching all of the reading log information. I think reading log has everything that is required for this sidebar. So like all of this data, all of these numbers are currently within reading log. Other than loans, which we're actually sticking in to the data that we get from the reading log. So in a refactor, I would probably even make it so that reading log just has a section called loans, which fetches this. Because I don't know, this doesn't really make sense to me why we're making two different calls. And then finally, here's the magic. We are calling a function called render, which is defined by our web framework, which takes a path, which is this. Do you remember what directory this would be in if you had to guess?
No, that's not a plugin. Would that be a template?
Perfect, 100%. So
Great.
The file that we're currently in is the plugin, and this is a plugin for the mybooks experience. And the thing that we're rendering is this thing on the left, which is a template. And then do you remember the third thing, if it's not a plugin or a template?
The macros. So user and mybooks are macros. Cool.
So they're or very close. So templates are very similar to macros. So we have, I'm going to call templates and macros the same thing for all intents and purposes. So we have our templates and macros, or templates. Then we have our controller, which is the plugins. And then the things like reading log or borrowing or the user here are part of core. And so core are all of our models. I'm glad I asked. I mean, you're completely on top of this. But I think that these types of questions are a perfect opportunity to like get all the wires uncrossed. So yeah, the three things are core for models, plugins for controllers, and then templates and macros for our views. And then once we wire this all up, we've only really made two changes here. The first is we removed the redirect and we renamed it mybooks home instead of mybooks redirect. And we're having it get some data and return a page. And then we created a template, which we can play around with. And now, instead of openlibrary.org, if we go to, I'm just going to go to oldev1.us to archive.org 1337, which is my testing playground. And I'm going to go to account/books. And so now, what do you think is going to happen when I press enter?
We should just go to the my books page template, the bare bones template that was on the left of your text editor.
That's right. What's going to happen to the URL?
It should stay the same, I think, because it would redirect. Well, I guess it might redirect to account/books for that. The username /account/books.
Brilliant.
Yeah,
that's exactly right. So before we made any of these changes and currently, the same logic exists in account, such that if someone goes to /account/books, this will always redirect to /people / your username and then books. So I think if we go to account books, I would expect it to go to /people/ account /people/ Sam or mecbot /books. What it used to do is account /books would go to people Sam books, and then that would do another redirect, a second redirect to account or /people/ Sam /books/ want to read. But now it'll just redirect from account books to people mecbot books, and then we have some of our information here. So I think the next part of this task is going to be figuring out how we can render this page with a sidebar, because our next design is going to have this. Kind of jumped the gun and assumed we were implementing the mobile stuff only, and we were going to go mobile first and then do desktop. But I think having a desktop page for my books and then redesigning the mobile might actually be a smarter way for us to go about this. So the last thing that we can ask is, how do we update our templates so that this page right here looks more like the want to read page, which has a pattern of left sidebar and then right content. And what we want to do for this, the second stage, or the phase that we're doing right now, is keep the sidebar and add a new page here that maps directly to my books, which has your loans and summary of everything else.
Can I ask, would it just be adding a like view like render template account /sidebar kind of thing to the top of the MyBooks template? Would that do it?
We could do something very similar. The problem with that is then we would be stuck with this design. So your intuition is perfect. So I'm going to open up a new file here, which is, we're currently in the mybooks.html, which is right over here. And the file that you're talking about is,
I think it's
reading
book, or yeah, that one too.
Yeah, and then you saw another one for
books.html, yeah, which might be,
it might be used in
know.
the reading log.
Yeah.
Let's check. So reading log here, I'm just going to do a search. I would expect the sidebar somewhere. Either that, or I would expect a macro that uses the sidebar. I think that there's got to be another, you know what? I think you were right and I was not right. I think you were right in your intuition of maybe books is the top level thing. And
I think books is like the current MyBooks. I'm not totally sure though.
I don't know if that's completely correct. I think, or maybe we're saying the same thing. But let me see if I can take a stab at this. I think books is this whole view.
Yeah, right.
Cool. So that would mean loans also uses the books interface. Currently reading uses books interface. The list uses book interface. So books is awesome. Yeah, we're saying the same thing, and you're right. Books is the top level my books page, left navigation, and then kind of right bar.
Like the container, yeah.
So I think what we could do is, and here we see the same thing. I think it's the my books template is what each of these is using. And then my books template is a class somewhere, my books template, where I bet if we look for something that says render, my gosh, there's a lot here. Then ultimately, yeah, here we go. Account books, which is the file we're seeing on the left, books. Yeah.
Yeah.
So it seems like ultimately what we want to do is or to do is render a account books view, which uses the account my books template, or as its template. And so we're not quite there yet, but if we did that, then the sidebar would come for free. And so that's the thing that we can hack on. And then we're pretty much in good shape. The remaining steps are, instead of just returning the my books template, we need to somehow take a look at the code for returning this in the page. Maybe we can hack this. Let's see. Can we do this and then give it a page of something like my books or just books, and then render this inside of this? So I think we wouldn't have a query or a sort in this case. So we can look at my books template where it's defined. And then eventually, here's where we render it. If docs is none, render account books. What does it do for page? That I don't know. Because a part of this should be loans. So here's sponsorships, here's the reading log, here's the lists. This should handle all of those cases. I don't see loans. Although, let's check loans. I'm curious, does loans have its own sidebar? No. So that means loans must be my book template. Looks like it's here. Borrow.get loans. All right, this might be jumping in a little bit more advanced than will be useful for the video. But we can, I think here we've demonstrated how to create a new controller, the difference between the models of views and the controllers, and how to create a new template. And I think I'll stop the video, and then the next step is we can chat a little bit about what the next steps are for us, if that's okay.
Yeah, sounds good.
Awesome.